it's all for play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hello, Aston Villa fans, and welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. For some strange reason, I don't think I'm coming through the correct audio, but maybe I am, maybe I'm not. You guys let me know. Actually, I think I am. Hello, everybody, and welcome to PSR Day, a day that's been marked in the calendars for many as an Aston Villa fan over the last 6 to 8 to 12 months, I suppose, after last year's dealings. Aston Villa were obviously in the spotlight last year for some of their dealings that were found to have been absolutely fair and proper, and obviously falling within the rules, even though some people did not like them. And Aston Villa will fall into that bucket again, where they've made some deals, judging by the reporting from both Matt Law, who we've had on the podcast previously, David Ornstein, and then we also see some stuff from John Townley and Matt Maher soon as well with regards to that. So it looks like Villa have done some wheeling and dealing. What exactly they've done is a bit contradictory at the moment from different sources, what exactly they've done. But I suppose the gist of this is we don't got to worry about PSR. PSR is in the bag and we don't have to worry about it. And I'll be honest with you, I've always been of the opinion that the Brain Trust are going to get this right, that they're going to be able to get the PSR stuff done. And I think it was, it's always been in hand. I think since that vote, Villa have kind of gone, right, look, we'll play by the rules that were set down last year, and we'll just use them. I know, look, it's a bit contradictory as well. And even when you look at other teams like Chelsea and Blue Co and the two different sets of accounts that they have there, and one account looking to be potentially, I don't know, depending on who you look at, anywhere from 800 million to almost 2 billion in debt at some stage, which is absolutely bonkers. And Villa are nowhere near that. I think it's I think it's fair to say the Villa should just play within the rules, get over that 3-year period and see what comes of this. But what we're going to do today is, as I say, I've called this Villa exercise the Chelsea rule, because essentially what they've done is essentially what Chelsea did last year. And while it will get us out of PSR difficulty, there's other conversations to come over the course of the summer with regards to squad cost ratio and all that. And we will talk about that. But for today, we're just looking at revenue. And I know people are saying SCR. Today is just about PSR. We can hold two thoughts in our mind at the same time, guys. Absolutely. What does this mean from a PSR? We have to. Today is what PSR has to be. We had to do PSR today. SCR can be done at a later date, but PSR is today. So that's why we're talking about PSR. So I'm fully aware that SCR, or the squad cost ratio, is what's going to catch Villa. I'm also not too worried about that either, given given the levels Villa need to come down. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there with regards to Villa's squad costs and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people have highlighted that are in the, it's not good, but it's not as bad as it's worse than other teams, but it's not insurmountable, is what I will say. And we will probably touch a small bit on that later, I suppose, really. Let's talk a bit. But I don't know as much about that. There isn't much information that comes out on that until we know what this year's wages are, and we don't know what they are yet. But from a PSR point of view, let's take a little look here. I'm going to bring up, this is the article from, David Ornstein. Brilliant David Ornstein. And I'm going to read down through this with you guys here. And it says, Aston Villa have agreed to sell their women's team to V Sports and a stake in the operation to prominent US-based investors. Villa say that they have no issues regarding the Premier League's profitability and sustainability rules, and are close to resolution with UEFA in relation to compliance with its financial fair play regulations amid ongoing discussions with the European governing body. I think that's so. Just kind of to pause on that for a moment. There seems to be a small bit of confusion as to what, like, we're getting different stories from different people, I suppose, with regards to the women's team. And this will all come out in the wash. And when it does, I suppose I'll get Paddy on for his thoughts on that as well. But like, some people are saying that that Villa have sold a stake now and will sell the rest of the team then to V Sports at a later date after the PSR deadline, that they've only sold what they needed to sell now to get over that hump. the PSR hump that we have now, and that they will sell the rest of it at a later date. So it goes on the books for a separate year, which I think is probably smart business. But I don't know what the ins and outs of it are of this. But look, as we said, there's no dates here, but you're kind of getting different kind of information from different people. There's also a piece with regards to the warehouse that we will discuss in a moment as well, because somebody has brought up that we're potentially going to do this with the warehouse as well in coming years. But we'll read on with regards to this. V Sports is the parent company which owns Villa and was previously founded by NWSE before being rebranded in 2021. It's jointly owned by American billionaires Wes Edens, blah, blah, we know that. It owns 29% stake. Okay, it just kind of goes through the what V Sports is here. The Athletic reported last week that Villa were exploring the option of selling their women's team to help with PSR compliance, which was an open secret. One source speaking on the condition of anonymity to protect relationships said Villa have been looking into a sale for the past 18 months, having recorded losses of 195 million over the past 2 years, leaving them in danger of breaching PSR. Again, nothing we didn't know already. Villa's move mirrors Premier League side Chelsea's decision to sell, as we said before, and there we go. In May, Chelsea sold an 8% stake in the women's team to Alexis I can't pronounce that, Ohanan, founder of Reddit and husband of tennis star Serena Williams. That stake put the total value of the team at approximately £245 million, which is absolutely bonkers and is not a value of any women's team in the world at all, ever. And I even Villa's team. But that's what it's been set at. It's been allowed to be set at that. So let's go for it. Villa finished sixth in the Women's Super League last season, having played in the English top flight since 2020-2021. Anyway, okay, let's go on here. So Chris Witherspoon, what does Chris Witherspoon say? Just over a year to the day after Chelsea sold their legal entity housing their women's team to a company elsewhere in their group structure, now Villa followed suit. Chelsea banked 198.7 million in profit on that intergroup sale last year. And though we don't know what the amount V Sports have valued women's team at, the two deals share one important quality. They provide precious profit to the bottom line and correspondingly a club's PSR calculations. Where else? There's a piece in this that I want to go through here as well. So here's where it mentions here. So Villa will be aided there by the arrival of US-based investors in the women's team. The entity of a third party provides key evidence in determining market value. So Villa could be forced to revise down their proceeds and profit if the Premier League deems the valuation excessive, which again, the arrival of new investors renders improbable. So that's the piece that I wanted to talk about here. So if Villa had sold this to themselves, the valuation of the team would be plucked out of the sky. But if an investor comes in and says, hey, we'll give you 15, 18 million for 10% of your women's team because we see the value in that team, well, then that sets a value for your team, as we spoke about previously there, as the former Reddit owner and Serena Williams' husband purchased the club for a price, a stake in the club for the price. Then it allowed Chelsea to sell the women's team for 198 million or whatever it was, and they could point to the fact that an investor bought in, and that they actually sold it to their interclub entity or intergroup entity for less than what the market value would have been based on that. I don't know how that works. Like, accounting and me do not go together. But I wanted to mention that. Now, obviously, this deal is unlikely, or it will not pass the test of UEFA, and that's something completely different that we will have to look at as well. Here's the Birmingham Mail's reporting on it. Villa expect to be compliant for Premier League's profit and loss sustainability for the current financial year. Confidence stems from ongoing talks to sell a stake in the women's team. Investors, as reported by the Telegraph, they could put a value in the region of 55 million on it. There's also been people who've been talking about the warehouse as well, and potentially the warehouse being worth 50 million, and depending on what the stake is here for the women's team, that maybe that might be the 5 million. That's where that 55 million has come from, that there might be Chinese whispers there, but nothing of that has been reported just yet. But under PSR calculations, Villa would include the potential sale. Oh, I'm not even sharing my screen there. Sure, I'm not sharing that one. So let me remove and share the article that I'm looking at. Stop screen share and add screen share here. There we go. And here we go. Now, I know you're not going to like looking at all the ads popping around here and things shoving in people's ears, but I do apologize. Nothing to do with me. It's Birmingham Live. According to the Telegraph, the club is negotiating a deal to sell up to 10% of the women's team to external investors worth around 5.5 million, with the remaining stake to be sold to the club's holding company. As a result, Villa are not under any pressure to sell players before the end. Yeah, I've seen contrasting views on that. But as I say, the Telegraph have put their money where their mouth is and printed it in an actual piece. So we will see what happens from there on and when these are announced. Also, it says here, meanwhile, Louis Barry could be on the move to Hull. I think that is probably a done deal at this stage, and so on, so on, so on. So the rest of it is just about Villa's affordability in the season just gone. So I should take a kickback. No, I'm all good. Yeah. So look, so my thoughts on this. My thoughts on this are that it's a necessary evil. It's a necessary evil that we have to we were spitting we were spitting feathers over Chelsea doing it last year, but when the rule wasn't closed, when the opportunity was there for the Premier League clubs to close the rule, they didn't close it. So from that point of view, I think it's all fair game that we would do this. If the rule gets closed into the future, it's better for us to have done it now than not to have done it. You know, if it is a barrier, and everybody is talking about PSR being a barrier to competitiveness, and I look, it's a very reductive and oversimplistic way of talking about it, but it is true to a certain point, you know, that it is a barrier to competitiveness because Villa don't have any debt. I think if the PSR took into account the debt that's unserviceable by the owners, I think that would make a lot more sense. But that they wanted to have a more level playing field so that nation-owned states can't come in, because essentially they can never be in debt. Well, they can be in debt, but you know what I mean. They will be able to generate the vast sums of money to keep these entities alive, and that won't ever be an issue. They can just raise it from taxes if they needed to, and that, once again, that's overly simplistic of what a nation-owned state could do to try and keep something afloat. But from my point of view, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens here. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with regards to the warehouse. So we're going to see a lot over the coming days of an exact figure, or this is the exact figure that Villa have gone with, or it's hard and fast. These are the numbers. We know them for sure. We're not going to know them for sure. We're not going to know what the stake is. We're not going to know what any of those are until the accounting figures come out, or it will be a couple of days from here on. There will also be a lot of speculation, half-truths and whole lies that will happen about what other entities Aston Villa have that could potentially be sold back into V Sports. So keep that in mind. I think today is just a day that, you know, just everybody, there's been quite a lot of times where, you know, myself and Paddy have said, be a bit calmer about BSR, that something will happen. Rabbits get pulled out of hats all the time, especially if you're Aston Villa, and we've done that. We've got a smart group over the team, and they've pulled the levers, you know, as and when they've seen fit. Now, another piece that came out today as well was reported by. It was reported by the Telegraph as well, saying that Aston Villa have committed to bring down their player costs by almost 20% over this summer and next. So that's what I wanted to talk about, I suppose, since a lot of people are mentioning about SCR. Aston Villa, by the very nature of the players that they're looking to get out of the club this year, by players that are on the books that are not getting game time, or out on loan, or on poor deals, or, you know, a lot of those deals will be ripped up. A lot of those players will be sold. So by dint of, Villa, I don't expect Villa to go out and bring in 5 players this offseason. They may bring in 5 players, but for me, it's not a prerequisite that they would do that. For me, it's about trimming the fat off the edge of the squad. Dendoncker, Coutinho, Bailey, Buendia, that ilk of player, those players that have been linked with moving out, will, by osmosis, by naturalness, bring down your squad cost ratio. They will, because they're high earners, you know. I would expect Aston Villa to replace those with younger players that are on less wages, and that isn't being prophetic in any way. That is what Villa will do. in that instance. I expect Villa maybe to have one, maybe two marquee signings, but I expect us to pad the squad with younger players, Morgan Rogers type players, Yuri Tielemans type players, albeit Yuri Tielemans came in free and is on pretty decent wages, but you know what I mean. Players that will not break the bank for Aston Villa from a wage point of view or from an overall cost of their being with the club point of view. Like if you think about Coutinho, the amount that Coutinho would have cost the club is not just his purchase fee, which is 18 million, I think, and then there was a loan fee on top of that previously. So if that loan fee was 4 million, let's say his 22 million in purchase cost plus his rumored 200 grand a week is another 800 grand a month. You know, multiply that by 12, you're talking 10, 11 million. And then multiply that by what was his contract, 4 years, that's 44. So you're talking about 66 million. And these are very rudimentary mathematics. 66 million book value for Philippe Coutinho. Like that won't be the case with the player that comes in to replace what Philippe Coutinho was in this squad. And realistically speaking, nobody might come in to replace what he was within the squad, because the players that we're going to bring in to reduce our wage bill will essentially be somebody coming in for Rashford, who was on an inflated wage with us last year. So from a PSR point of view, we're sorted that. From a squad cost ratio point of view, it can be done by trimming the fat in the squad. It's going to require absolutely brilliant scouting. You know, you're going to want to pull another Morgan Rogers out of the bag somewhere. You're going to want to pull another what we think players like Andres Garcia can be, or what John Duran was for the club. You're going to need to pull one or two of those over the next 2 transfer windows out of the bag somewhere. Next 3 transfer windows, should I say, out of the bag somewhere. But it can absolutely be done. Can be done. So for me, the squad cost ratio is a work in progress, and it doesn't need to be down by July the 30th or August the 1st or whatever, but it may very well be done. And also as well, once again, it is linked to the revenue that the club brings in. So past year, our revenue will be up. Yes, our wages will be up. What's the delta between the two in a percentage point of view? And we'll know about that when the accounts are published and are available to view in the coming months, I suppose. I can never remember when accounts are published. So yeah, so look, I suppose the season starts here. The off season starts here. As more and more news comes out about this, I'm sure that it will be. There will be more talking points, but there still is the squad cost ratio point. Villa will still probably let players go, but if you remember, Unai Emery said at the end of last season, what was the story about? I can't remember what the exact story was, but it was, what does a perfect off season, or what do you think you need to include in this team to go a step further next year? And he said, I just want to keep the players that I have here. And I think they've always known that, you know, the last couple of transfer windows we've gone out with about like Pau Torres, Diaby, Onana, and so on and so on. I think this year will be a bit more frugal, but obviously still padding the quality within the team, because you can do that. You can buy players that don't cost 50 million a player. You wouldn't think it looking at what Chelsea are doing, but you can absolutely do that. And you can bring those into your squad, and you can bring them on throughout the course of the year. So let's see what happens. As Kieran O'Byrne says here, Jonathan Bakayoko type players. Absolutely. There are opportunity costs all around every single league here, and good scouting will get you good players. Good money doesn't always buy you good players. And we know that as Aston Villa fans, but good scouting will get you good players. And I trust this group to do that. So I suppose onwards from here, I would expect us to get those outgoings going into next year, or into going from tomorrow, to account for PSR into next year. The Ken Kessler Haydens, the Louis Barry, maybe we see Leon Bailey go now, maybe we see Buendia interest hot up, and so on. And then onwards from there, you know, who's going to come in and replace those within the squads? Or do we elevate from within, maybe with some of the under-18s? Do they get trusted? Unlikely based on what we've seen previously, but maybe our hands may be forced. So either way, there will be a churning of the mid to the bottom part of the roster. And we'll be here for every step of it along the way here in For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. So hopefully you will join us. I am going to jump off again. Got to go back to work. But thanks so much, everybody, for your time. As and when more comes out on this, we get Paddy on, we get Jay on again, and we'll chat about this. We maybe have a three-way chin mic on this one, just to see what their thoughts are, because I am fully aware my thoughts are always overly optimistic with stuff like this, and sometimes I do miss the wood from the trees. So it'd be good to have two other people here just to check me in case I'm overly optimistic and stuff like this. So we will see you later on in the week. Again, probably tomorrow night, Wednesday night. I've got something sorted for Wednesday night, and then something for Thursday as well. So probably over the next 3 or 4 days, you're going to be seeing a lot of us. And if anything breaks in the meantime, we'll pop on for our opinions and that too. But everybody, thanks so much for your time. Stay safe, stay healthy. And all that's left to say is up the villa.